It was a Sunday morning surprise. After 8 seasons as Syracuse football's head coach, Dino Babers fired this morning and now without a job. We'll break down what went wrong and what's next for the program. And by the way, there is still at least one more game to play this season. All that and more in this Citrus TV special report. Hey everyone, welcome into the Citrus TV special report. Chilekasi Adele joined alongside Ian Nicholas and Andrew Della Piana. Guys, it's been a big day, and by now I'm sure you guys at home have heard this news as well. If you haven't, Dino Babers fired this morning. Why don't we take a look at this statement from Athletic Director John Wildhack, in which he says, quote, "I appreciate everything his wife Susan, and their family have done over the past 8 years for Syracuse athletics, Syracuse University, and most importantly, our student athletes. Thanks to Dino's leadership, our student athletes have performed at the highest levels in the classroom, have dedicated countless hours to supporting our communities, and have gone on to achieve great success both professionally and personally. As we embark on a change in leadership at the helm of Syracuse football, on behalf of Syracuse University, I thank Coach Babers for his leadership, character, and dedication, and wish him well in his future endeavors." This is somebody 41-55 in 8 seasons, the least bowl games of any ACC school at that time, and John Wildhack talks about wishing him well in his future endeavors. I think that's interesting. This is someone who's 62 years old, Ian.
Right. I mean, who knows what the future is for Dino Babers in terms of being a head coach at the high D1 level, at the Power 5 level. This was his big break, and to be honest, Chile, even though we weren't around at Syracuse University when Babers got the job in 2016, he was a coach on the rise. This was somebody who turned programs like Eastern Illinois and Bowling Green into powerhouses in a matter of years. People thought Syracuse could be his potential launching pad to the next level. So this was not necessarily supposed to be the last stop for Dino Babers. Ultimately, I think it is his last stop as a major Power 5 head coach, but all said and told, here at Syracuse, not an awful run for Babers.
Indeed. Andrew, what are your initial thoughts tonight?
The thing that sticks out the most for me, Chile, is that he couldn't capitalize on those incredible starts this season. If we take a look at the last 2 years as the big focal points. Last year, 6-0, you finished 7-6, losing in that final bowl game of the Pinstripe Bowl. And then, of course, this year, 4-0, really great start. And then, you lose 5 straight games by combined 150 points to 36. That's just not going to cut it in today's age of college football. And then, as you guys said, it just became his time where Dino Babers is not fit for modern college football anymore, and he hasn't been able to compete with the rest of the ACC.
Indeed, Andrew. And I think one of the interesting things talking about Dino Babers' entire career here at SU, the pinnacle, right? Everybody mentions that Clemson game, knocks off Clemson, everybody storms the field. We thought this program was for real. A lot of fans thought this program was for real, but ever since that, not a lot of moving along as we've seen over the past few seasons. I think the biggest thing in big games, what happens with this team, right? The discipline, all the problems, the fact that over the past couple of years they haven't shown up to compete. I've said this anecdote before on Q's Countdown. I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, watching the Syracuse and UNC game, which ended up being a 40-7 loss for SU, and the bar turned off that game for Michigan high school football. Who does that, right? But it just goes to show you that, this team has struggled to compete at times.
Right, especially you look towards the tail end of regular seasons here at Syracuse, and this Syracuse team was not built to compete in ACC play in the month of November. Dino Babers ends his run here with the Orange 7-22 in the final month of the regular season. 4 months of November where they didn't win a game. So as Andrew mentioned, sure, you can dominate in the non-conference slate, but does it matter if you're limping to a bowl game, if you get into a bowl game? We knew that was going to be a gauntlet of a schedule. You mentioned North Carolina, Florida State, even Virginia Tech on the road. Everybody knew, Chile, that was going to be a struggle. But even after that, losses to Boston College and Georgia Tech last night, just couldn't compete down the stretch in the ACC.
And it's still surprising, Ian and Andrew, to see how this team, even last night, was still able to compete in these kinds of games. This is a team that's running out there with no real set quarterback.
No.
Got LaQuinn Allen and Dan Villari running there. But, hey, we talked a little bit about some of those losses. Of course, last night, Syracuse losing to Georgia Tech down in Atlanta. Our Jesse Cook has the recap.
Syracuse football got crafty in Saturday night's road loss at Georgia Tech. 5 different players suited up under center, but for most of the game, SCU didn't even have a set quarterback. So with backups available and quarterback turned tight end, turned back into a quarterback, Dan Villari going 14 of 14, why did it take till the fourth quarter to try a forward pass of longer than 10 yards? Here's what head coach Dino Babers had to say.
Because some of the other stuff was really good and sometimes we didn't have the ball. You know, our big thing is we're going to run the football. We're going to keep the ball in the hands of our people that we think are good. We did throw a lot of passes. We're not trying to throw them less than 10 yards. We just got tackled before we could get to 10 yards. So when we throw that, we expect them to go all the way just like the runs.
I think we just stayed focused, and you know, we didn't blink, we didn't flinch, and we just kept playing. And eventually, you know, stuff opened up.
I had reps with Dan. I had reps with all those guys, you know. It's the same thing, you know. And Dan's a baller. I'm proud of him, too, you know, for stepping up, too.
With the way we're playing ball, it eventually starts to wear people down. The main thing is making sure they didn't get away from us. They got away from us a little bit, but we closed that distance to make it a game, closed that gap to make it a game, and it was just disappointing that we couldn't get that final touchdown.
To be honest, the bowl game is not my standard. You know, my standard is ACC championship. So, I just that's what we can get now. So we have to get that. That's the bare minimum in my eyes. So I think it'll mean a lot for these seniors, and you know, I want to play 2 more. I want to play 2 more games for sure. I don't want to just play this last one.
The winner of this game earned bowl eligibility, and that's what the home crowd of Georgia Tech got. As for Syracuse, the Cuse has one more shot at earning that bowl eligibility. That comes next Saturday against Wake Forest. Reporting from Atlanta, Jesse Cook, Citrus TV.
Jesse Cook, thank you so much. Hey, I want to focus on one of the angles that Jesse took in that recap right there, the Dan Villari angle. Is this somebody who, you know, through an interim coach and potentially a new head coach that you focus on as kind of the head of this team with his attitude?
Well, it's interesting, Chile, that the interim coach was the tight end coach and they made that decision. Dan Villari has been the focal point of this offense in the last 2 games. Ran north of 150 rushing yards in that game against Pitt. And without Syracuse having a quarterback, they needed someone to turn to. They didn't trust Garrett Trader. Braden Davis, we saw him take a couple of snaps from wide receiver, which I didn't think I'd ever say in a sentence before this season. And then also Luke McPhail on that final drive on the interception. Really kind of summed up the quarterback carousel that's gone on for SU football this season. But to have Dan Villari now as your focal point, and he said it best, his standard is not to go 6-6 every year. It's to make the ACC championship. And while that might have some lofty goals, he's a guy who's determined to get to that next level, and you saw it perfectly in that game last night.
Yeah, seems like someone who's becoming a quiet or actually a very vocal leader, Ian.
Right, especially, you know, I give Dino Babers a lot of credit. You know, Syracuse University is known for being a communication school, and he is an ace at hiding his cards. Over the years, he's very media savvy. He knew how to hide the good stuff from the media. Dan Villari, though, is a kid from Long Island who's rough and tough and hasn't had a star role at the collegiate level until this season. He was honest. He was point blank with the media for weeks. When all the other players would give the media-trained answers, Dan Villari would say, yeah, my teammates are kind of dogging it. Yeah, we need to do better. It's not on the coaches, it's on us. And that is just accountability to a T. So I hope Dan Villari's back next season for Syracuse Athletics, because I understand he might not be a fantastic quarterback, even though he went 14 of 14 in that Georgia Tech game. They were throwing little dinks and dunks around the field. But the guy is a dude. The team rallies around him. He's a good athlete, too. And I think that they're going to find a way to use him. And I hope that the interim coach and his former position coach finds a way to use him over these final game or 2.
Yeah, and he wants to build a big program, a program with a good culture, a winning program. You take a look at the ACC over the past couple of seasons. There are some teams that have really built things up. We talk about Mac Brown at UNC. We talk about Duke. We talk about Florida State. I wonder if that pressured this decision at all.
Well, I think those programs have something that Syracuse does not. That's financial support. You know,
especially FSU.
Right, because after that Florida State loss, and, you know, Brent Axe of Syracuse.com asked Dino Babers in the press conference a couple days after that, you know, Coach, what's the deal? You said things would kind of change heading into this Florida State game. And he says our depth is gone. Our depth is being bought away. That's a Florida State team that's buying depth away from us. And Syracuse has seen it over the years. Just this past season, Deuce Chestnut, LSU, Jahai Carter, Ohio State, two of the best players on last year's team, not necessarily going to greener pastures. They're not playing in their new spots, but they left because there's money involved. There's NIL involved. That's something that Syracuse doesn't have at the moment. And it could be Bill Belichick coaching the Syracuse football team next year. If they don't have good NIL, or at least average to above average NIL pumping through, nobody is going to have success recruiting up here at Syracuse. And Dino Babers was always fighting an uphill battle there.
Yeah, I mean, you do see Syracuse trying to. They've done some stuff with the Football Operations Center and the Lally Athletic Complex,
right.
Things that are still in progress as we speak tonight. But my whole question about this as well, with this team, with everything that is built up over the past couple of years, is it something that is just a symptom of Dino Babers, or is it a larger problem? Because I think there would be a lot of people who say it's a larger problem.
I think it's a little bit of both, Chile. When we look at this at face value, Dino Babers really has done everything he can in that kind of circle of recruiting, whether it's New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. He's done everything he really can to try to get the best players possible. But again, you're competing with some really talented schools out there in the Big Ten. Your Penn States, your Rutgers over there. And to bring guys all the way up to Syracuse, New York, that can also be tough to do as a head coach. So to try to find that middle ground between you're trying to get your top 4 stars, but a lot of those guys are hanging around 3 stars, and sometimes that just doesn't cut it in the ACC.
All right, let's talk one more game to go. Wake Forest. On the sideline will be Nunzio Campanelli. What do we know about him?
Well, we know he's a tight ends coach, but what we do know is he's been in this spot before. I know a lot of people probably saw that press release and said, why is Rocky Long, the defensive coordinator who Syracuse brought in this season, and a former very successful head coach at San Diego State in the Mountain West, why isn't he the guy who's taking over this program for a game or two if they reach bowl eligibility? And the answer is probably he doesn't want to do it anymore. You thought Dino Babers was old. Rocky Long is over 70 years old, and he's probably had enough of putting up with recruiting and all the whining and complaining that's done with the job. Nunzio is somebody who's from New Jersey, and like Andrew mentioned, can win the recruiting battle with the recruits that are currently committed to play for Syracuse. Syracuse has one of its best recruiting classes ever right now, at least under the Dino Babers regime, just outside the top 50 in the country. You're not going to keep all of those guys with a new head coach in town, but a lot of those top recruits are from the Garden State, and a guy like Campanelli who's got tight ties not only to Rutgers, but also to 2 of the top high school programs in the state. Maybe he can keep a few of those guys regardless of who's leading this team next year.
An impressive rap sheet in North Jersey football. Don Bosco Prep, Bergen Catholic, 2 very good schools in North Jersey. Again, could be good for recruiting purposes in the future, but also trying to curry favor with a lot of those recruits that are committed to Syracuse already. This is a team 51st in the nation, the 2024 recruiting class, ranked according to 247 Sports.
It's going to be tough, Ian, as you mentioned, that Dino Babers is no longer that guy that can bring in some top-tier talent from those states we just talked about to see that new set of group of recruits that is going to be under a new regime. You kind of have to take a step back. Dino Babers just was going to finish up his 8th season before he got fired today. He had a pretty good solid group going for next year, and this program was trying to get back to the way they were, back inside the top 15. But if that just isn't the case, it's not meant to be.
One more question for you guys. Anybody on your radar to potentially become the new head coach?
2 names I've heard today that I don't think are the flashiest, but they are certainly names that I could see, to be perfectly honest. Tony White, who knows his program well, left the program a year ago to join Matt Rule at Nebraska to become his defensive coordinator, but has been touted as a very good leader, and their defense was very good in 2022. And I also think a good candidate for the job could be Doug Marrone. Excuse me, it's been a while since he's been up here in the 315. He built his Syracuse team into a bowl-eligible team. He's got strong NFL ties, but I think a good thing about Doug Marrone is he's a former offensive lineman here at Syracuse. He coaches offensive linemen in the NFL. Syracuse has an awful offensive line, and whoever you put under center over the last few years, whether it's been Tommy DeVito or Garrett Schrader, they've been running into a buzzsaw. So I think you need to bring in a recruit. You need to bring in a coach who knows how to recruit offensive linemen and build them up. So I'm not saying Doug Marrone is the guy, but what I am saying is someone in that mold might not hurt.
Right. Andrew, anybody real quick?
Swirling around, maybe Jimbo Fisher. Is that a name I could
Oh, my
throw out there?
goodness.
He just got paid a lot of money from his Texas A&M buyout, but He was at the top of Pete Thamel's list for potential coaching candidates. I'd love to see him here in Syracuse, but in all realisticness, probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
He got a massive check over there from the Aggies. He pulled the Ed Oregon where I'm just going to set up.
If he's feeling like doing some charity work, why not?
Yeah, why not?
The rumor mill is swirling for sure. That'll do it for this Citrus TV special report. Don't forget, you can follow us on X and Instagram at CitrusTV Sports. For Andrew Della, Piana, and Ian Nicholas, I'm Chilekasi, Adele. Good day.